Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Thanks for joining with us this morning. Appreciate you. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to participate with our show. We try to make sure that we give you the news that the mainstream media and the propagandists in that mainstream media withhold from you. So joining us this morning will be the propaganda destroyer-in-chief, Doreen. And you can bet that Doreen will be able to give us some insight as to all of the nonsense we hear flying about. For my bullet points this morning, I want to talk a little bit about the issue of the case of Dianne Feinstein. She recently stated in a Senate committee meeting that this is her quote, and I put this up on Facebook for those of you who find this interesting and want to forward it on to some friends. Feinstein on treason. That's my line. Here's her quote. So, I would be happy to sit down with you again and see if we could work something out. But I think we have to, if you're going to do this, find a way that veterans who are incapacitated for one reason or another mentally don't have access to this kind of weapon. Really. Translation into layman's language, if you've ever had PTSD, you're disqualified. She is trying to limit any veteran who has ever had or been declared to have a mental illness from having access and ownership of firearms. Boy, she sure knows how to piss off the wrong folks, huh? Basically, what this comes down to is that our government at this point knows that they're not going to get Congress to agree to another replication of the 1994 to 2004 gun ban. And so they're doing everything within their power to find an alternative method to accomplish the task. Just like they're doing with the EPA, instituting cap and trade, because Congress won't play along. So, they're buying literally billions of rounds of ammunition, domestically, hundreds of millions of rounds of ammunition for the military for foreign use. They're limiting the supply of ammunition, and therefore with the theory that at some point all of the guns just become clubs with metal attached. They're working on trying to chip away at our Second Amendment in the principle of removing Mount Everest with a spoon. But that doesn't mean that you can't damage Mount Everest. You can. And so our goal, our job, will be to make sure that we are watchful, passing the right types of legislation that nullify federal law, and make it clear that in the event that the federal government attempts to continue to violate our Second Amendment rights, that we as a nation are going to have to toss all these bums out on their ears. The problem, of course, is that we, as the citizens of the country, and the citizens, quite frankly, of Missouri, have very, very little power as individuals. What we do possess is a lot of power as a collective group. And that, ladies and gentlemen, makes the difference. Our job is to be constantly watchful so that our republic doesn't slip away from us. They're currently trying to modify the NDAA so that they can say not only associates of Al-Qaeda, but associates of Al-Qaeda. I'm reminded of the old game that used to be played, and I don't know how many of you remember this, but it was called 7 Steps to Kevin Bacon, where basically anyone could be connected back to Kevin Bacon within 7 steps. I know a guy who knows a guy who works in the movie industry, who ultimately knows a guy who was tied to the producer of a movie, who knows Kevin Bacon. 4 steps, I'm back to Kevin Bacon. Unfortunately, it looks like they're beginning to play that game in D.C. Except it's not with actors, it's with American lives. What we see is a total degradation and abdication of all of the principles of our Constitution. And they pour forth from D.C. like diarrhea. Unfortunately, there's no pill we can give Washington to stop the flow. But, there are some things that are heartening. The black business leader who came out and who is the head of the National Black Chamber of Commerce, gentleman, pretty smart guy, by the name of Henry Alford. He's the co-founder and the president and the CEO of the National Black Chamber of Commerce. He kind of got himself a little bit of a national reputation, perhaps infamously with his own liberal left side, during a February 25th interview, where basically he declared that he got swept up in Obama's rhetoric and the media hype and the concept of racial solidarity. And this is what he states. Alfred says he now regrets supporting Obama's presidential bid in 2008. He allowed himself to be swept up in the rhetoric of hope, the medial hype, and racial solidarity. Quote, he made a fool out of me and a lot of other people, says Alfred. His quotes go on to say he doesn't have a clue. He never had a business. He's never had a real job. He doesn't understand how it all works. He's bad. And I supported him the first time around because I had hopes, because he's black. Shame on me. The interviewer asked him why he supported Obama in 2008 after he'd already tipped his hand regarding his socialist leanings with this redistribution of wealth comment, right? I kind of ignored it, says Alfred. I said, well, maybe he's just talking. But he was serious, really serious. And it is truly, if you read the Communist Manifesto, that's their philosophy. He's not Adam Smith. He does not believe in capitalism the way our founding fathers did. He's very social, and it's getting borderline communist. He was later interviewed by Andrea Tantaros. She's now a radio host and a host on the Five on Fox News. By the way, I like Andrea. I think she's got a pretty level head. And she asked him to explain how he, a highly educated and successful businessman, had been so completely fooled by Obama. His quote, the guy is a shrewd politician with a good ground game and a shrewd team. But he then confessed to having succumbed to what he said was the tribal instinct. It was the timing, the aura of history, says Alfred, that America could have a black president. From slavery to Jim Crow to now, we can hold the highest office in the land. People just had to do it. They went for it, including myself. I saw a black president, and that's wrong. Folks, you've heard me say before that many times, rather than admit that they're wrong, most people will go about, even in the face of empirical proof, doing everything in their power to prove that they're right. Kudos to Mr. Alford for having the honesty and the intellectual honesty and integrity to say, you know what? I was buffaloed. We need a couple 100 million more like him. We'll be back in just a minute. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Mike Evans. We'll be right back.
The area's best selection of firearms, ammunition, and accessories can only be found at West Plains Pawn and Jewelry, your Class 3 dealer for automatic weapons and suppressors, including Gemtech and Huntertown, with a great selection of holsters, slings, magazines, and gun storage options. West Plains Pawn and Jewelry will also do special orders. With new arrivals every week, the area's best selection of firearms, ammunition, and accessories can only be found at West Plains Pawn and Jewelry, 1713 West U.S. Highway 160, or shop online at westplainspawn.com.
The further we reach out, the closer we all become. Hey, it's Nate Cooper here with the Ozarks Best News Talk 107.1 The Point. I invite you to join us Sunday mornings. The program is a combination of local and national known speakers. So I encourage you to do two things. Listen in on Sunday mornings from 8 until noon and find out how you can become a sponsor of one of the programs. Just call our offices at 255-0427. Beyond the Point, Sundays on the Ozarks Best News Talk 107.1.
You know what I like about Mr. Alford? I like the fact that he's intellectually honest. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is something we see too little of these days. We don't hear anyone who is intellectually honest enough to come off their high horse position and actually admit that maybe they got something to learn. I met another guy this weekend, and we're going to talk about him in a minute with Doreen. And I met another guy this weekend who kind of reminded me of the same thing. And he taught me a lesson, too. Good morning, Doreen. How are you?
Well, I am just dandy today.
You're sounding dandy.
Yep.
You're too chipper for a Friday morning.
Hey, man, spring is coming. That's like my favorite time of year. So,
I know it. I know it. Hey, we got a call. Let's take it real quick. Go ahead. Whoops. Let's not.
They changed their mind.
I guess so. Maybe we said all there was to say.
I missed the bullet points this morning, Michael.
You did?
Yes, I did. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I was talking about. I kind of closed it out with this Mr. Alford, Harry Alford, the co-founder and president and the CEO of the National Black Chamber of Commerce, he's calling Obama tyrannical and a borderline communist. And I was just commenting about the fact that I really am impressed with people who are intellectually honest enough to say, you know what, I was wrong.
Yes. And
this guy has come right out and said it, and publicly. You know, I mean, he says, I was fooled. I voted for him because he was black. Shame on me. You know, and I got caught up in the hype and in the media concept and in the historical concepts of, wow, it would be the first black president. It would really change, you know, the view of black people in the nation. And he was right in that. But you know, it was the wrong guy to throw his cards in with, you know?
Wrong guy, yeah.
And, I mean, I'll give you an example. I'd have absolutely no problem with Dr. Carson.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, he's just as black as Obama. In fact, he's more black because he's not half white. So, but, I mean, just to throw that whole issue out there, right?
Right.
You've heard Dr. Carson, I'm sure.
Yes, I have.
I mean, the guy is so impressive to me that I have actually forwarded links of his speeches and stuff to all my family and people I know. And I'm trying to, I mean, my brothers who live in the liberal East Coast are just blown away by this guy. So, hey, we've got a couple of calls. You want to take them?
Yeah, sure. That'll be fine.
Hey, fire away, caller, quickly.
I hung up when Doreen came on.
That's it. You're cut off.
No,
I'm kidding.
I hung up when I heard her come on. I just had a question.
Yeah.
What is the classification of the mental illness that Dianne Feinstein suffers from that she can't get a grasp on the Constitution?
That would be libtard.
Yeah, libtard. That's a good
one. Okay.
Mental dwarfism.
That was all I had to
collision. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sweetie.
Doreen.
Thanks, hon.
Yeah.
Go ahead, caller. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, Mike. You know, when you make an argument, you automatically get invested in it. That's probably the problem with it.
What's that now?
That anytime you make an argument, you kind of get yourself emotionally invested in it, and it's hard to break yourself loose from it. It really is.
True. Well, and no one wants to admit they're wrong, right?
Yeah.
So,
it's hard.
that's part of it. And what I find refreshing, though, is that there are those folks on the left who are actually starting to, one, come around a little bit, and two, admit that perhaps maybe their judgment was, not quite as unbiased as even they would like to have thought they were being about it. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's the encouraging part for me, is to see somebody who is going to be intellectually honest and do it publicly. Because we can all be intellectually honest to ourselves in the mirror, right? But if we've taken a public stand and then we don't retract that stand publicly, it doesn't do any good.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, it's kind of, and it's kind of like we have an obligation to right the wrong that we've committed in a public environment too. And when you're talking about people who are in a position of leadership, who other people are listening to them, following their concepts and their ideas, and looking to them as a leader who has wisdom, knowledge, and can take a lesson from those folks, it's even more important for them to
It's much more courageous, actually,
and far more courageous. Absolutely. So
it has a much stronger impact than your average Joe on the street, as it were, because they are in a position of leadership, and everybody's
stand there with your hat in your hand and say you're wrong, buddy, is one of the hardest things in the world.
Yep, that is true, and we all suffer from that. Even those of us who are conservative, there are times when we have to admit we're wrong, And
I was listening to Ron Paul. Some of the stuff he says about the drone stuff, I have to, largely I agree with him, but some of it is just seriously flawed.
Are you talking about Rand or Ron?
Rand Paul.
Rand, yeah. Well, I will say one thing. I mean, he came out the other day, and I'm glad to hear somebody else put it out on the table. He fires back at McCain and Graham and says, these guys think the whole world is a battlefield. And it's finally time that somebody who's in the public environment actually comes out and says that. Because, listen, the conservative neocons, if you want to call them that, right? These neoconservatives who are really warmongers and, constantly beating the war drum, these guys are just as bad as the liberals on the other side. Yeah. So, I'm actually encouraged to hear Rand Paul come out and say, you know what? I'm going to point the finger at my own side, and I'm going to say there's something wrong with our thinking, too.
Right. And, the other thing about his filibuster, Michael, is that whenever you talk for 13 hours, you're probably going to misspeak a little bit at some point or another.
Sure.
Right. You're going to stumble over your tongue.
So if he wasn't,
unless you're a radio talk show host.
Yeah, unless you're Michael Evans. There you go.
You call me the mouthful of coffee.
No, but, I mean, at some point, we're all going to misspeak, or we might offer something up as a fact that we've only heard alluded to, that we haven't researched whether or not it actually is fact.
Right.
So, I'd rather have somebody say something that might not actually be 100% true than flat out lie to our faces left, right, and sideways like we've become accustomed to with this president.
Right. Well, and I have to tell you, though, Glenn, the drone thing for me, and I think this is what Paul Rand Paul is alluding to. There is no policy on them right now, and it's something that's coming on us so fast that we have to take preemptive action to make sure that it doesn't get out of hand.
Jump on that horse and get it saddled before it leaves the barn. Exactly right.
Exactly. So, I'm glad that he's opening up the dialogue, even if he's doing it in a way that, may tick off some conservative folks. Because, you know what? We've got to get a handle on this. I mean, his quote, they think the whole world's a battlefield, including America, and that the laws of war should apply. He's absolutely right. We're not at war, not at least domestically. And quite frankly, we shouldn't be at war internationally either. Yeah. And, these drones don't involve due process. And he's right. He says, when you ask for an attorney, they tell you to shut up. That's not my understanding of the way America works. Thank God somebody in a position actually has the courage to stand up and say that in front of a camera.
Ted Cruz yanking our Attorney General down. Now, he needed to yank in a severe way. A simple no to that would have been outstanding.
Say that again, the last sentence.
Ted Cruz was questioning
Ted Cruz.
General, Mr. Holder, in front of the subcommittee, and Mr. Holder started going through this convoluted process about circumstances and such, a simple no. Now, I can foresee circumstances where you could use an armed drone on American soil. I mean, if somebody's about to use WMDs in a city, the president at that point should just do what he's got to do, and then he goes in front of American people and tells them what he had to do, why he had to do it.
That's one of those asking for forgiveness is easier than getting permission.
That's right.
I don't disagree with that.
It could happen.
But here's my issue with that particular scenario. We've already gone to war for weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist and cost a lot of people their lives and a lot of families, their siblings, their husbands. This is just on the assumption that somebody has that isn't good enough for me.
I agree. But I think Glenn's point was it's an exigent threat. They know that there's a vehicle heading down Highway X, and they've got a nuclear weapon in the back of this box truck, and the goal is stop them before they get to City Y. And I'm not in disagreement with you on that. All right, but here's the problem. Once you give them that inch, they take the mile. It's like going to your teenager and saying, it's okay if you don't do your homework tonight. And he takes that as a blanket statement. Right. And we all have teenagers, so we know exactly what I'm talking about. He takes that as a blanket statement that every night going forward, no homework. Mom said so.
That's right. I don't have to do homework ever again.
So you have to quantify that. And that is why, it's...
the discussion.
Well, that's why not only the discussion, but it's also the reason why Congress, or I shouldn't say Congress, our original founders, if you will, wrote the Constitution, but there's a couple of words that they should have added in there. One, I mean that, and let me tell you what they are, and I think it would have solved a lot of problems. The word expressly. When you talk about limited and enumerated powers, by putting in the word expressly authorized, that would have eliminated the Commerce Clause crap, that would have eliminated this welfare clause, that would have eliminated a lot of these concerns that we have, which is where all of the overreach comes from the federal government. And, when we talk about things like these drones, if the word expressly were in the Constitution in a couple of key operative areas, this stuff would not be, we wouldn't be talking about this. Because the truth of the matter is that, the federal government has no right to operate in the manner in which it does. And when we talk about things like, we're not talking about an exigent threat, because soon everything becomes the exigent threat, if you follow my point, right? Everything becomes an emergency. And how do we know that?
Everything's an enemy, yeah.
How do we know that? Because I have never heard the word crisis thrown around more frequently than I have in the last 10 years.
Right. We're in a state of continual crisis.
Oh, my goodness. And remember what James Madison said, that crisis is the rallying cry of the tyrant, because they use it every time to develop the crisis, get people scared enough to demand help and support and defense, and then they hand you that defense, but it comes with a shackle or a loss of liberty, one or the other, however you want to view that.
Right. Well, the issue with the NDAA making the entire world, including our country, a battlefield, is of import in the discussion of the drone use and whether or not we do use it on American soil, on American citizens. Holden came out and said that that it was okay for them to use drones under certain circumstances, and then because of Rand Paul's filibuster and all of these questions being raised, he reversed his position.
Right.
So it is important to have this discussion and for people to be aware of it. I'm fairly impressed that we have mainstream media talking about drones now.
Exactly. And you know why? Because when this kind of thing happens, they can't ignore it anymore. They just, at some point, we hit the critical mass kind of concentration where they can no longer avoid the topic, right. And that's the value of what Rand Paul did. So, hey, Glenn, I appreciate that call. Thank you.
Yes.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to touch on a couple of other newsy type things. Doreen, you wanted to talk a little bit about the Firearms Freedom Symposium, right, and your impressions on that. So, great.
Sure.
We're going to be back in just a minute, folks. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Our special guest this morning, as is every Friday morning, is Doreen Hannes. We'll be right back.
go. I'm Chris Foster. The unemployment rate's down 7.7%.
Non-farm payrolls jumping 236,000 in February, much more than expected.
Fox Business Network's Peter Barnes at the Labor Department. A captured spokesman for Al-Qaeda's due in court in a half hour.
Weeks after he was arrested in Turkey, Suleiman Abu Ghaith, Osama bin Laden's son-in-law, will be arraigned here in New York this morning on terrorism charges, including conspiring to kill Americans. He faces life imprisonment.
Fox News Radio's Courtney Keeley. The mayor of Miami-Dade County, Florida, is apologizing to an 82-year-old woman physically removed from a train 2 weeks ago for singing religious hymns.
You're going to get up here? Let's go. Let's go, man.
A transit spokeswoman says Emma Anderson was causing a disturbance, ignored a warning to quiet down, and that singing without a permit is prohibited. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Thanks to Jason over at Wits End Classic Barbershop for sponsoring our phone lines. You can call our Wits End Classic Barbershop hotline, and you can get over there and get yourself a shave and a haircut. 2 bits. Well, a little bit more than 2 bits. Thanks to our friends over at Pizza Hut as well. On Porter Wagoner Boulevard, they have an outstanding lunch special. And on Tuesday nights, they have Kids Eat Free. Children under 12 eat for free. They're on Porter Wagoner Boulevard in West Plains. Make sure you visit Pizza Hut. Our friends at the Battery Station, 303 Washington Avenue at batterystation.com. You can also reach them via telephone at 257-7799. Folks over at West Plains Pawn and Gun. Kenny's a friend of ours and a great supporter of our program. 417-256-3000, located about a mile and a half on Route 160 past Walmart. You can reach him also on the web at westplainspawn.com. Ozark Mountain Self-Reliance, half-mile east of Walmart at Route 62 in Mountain Home. You can find them on the web at ozarkmtnselfreliance.com. And you can call them at 870-492-4030. My friend Mary over at Chantilly's Artisan Bakery, the best damn bakery in 100 miles. She can be reached at 417-255-2253. You can also find her at number 2 Evans Arcade. Outstanding bakery. Bill Stone over at Stone Construction at 2930116. Whether remodeling, building new, or doing some kind of custom construction like commercial or farm work, Bill's the guy for you. 2930116.
Family Fun and Fitness, LLC presents rape and assault prevention classes at Country Cupboard in Licking, Missouri. Men, women, boys, and girls, if you want to know how to stack the deck in your favor in a situation where violence is the only answer, this class is for you. Rape and assault prevention classes are held Monday evenings at 5:30 beginning February 11th and run through March 18th. Class size is limited, so call today 417-260-1006 or register at Country Cupboard, 217 North Highway 63 in Licking.
News Talk 107 The Point weather sponsorships are available for your business marketing plans. Contact Cody or Josh at 255-2548 for more information.
From the Point Weather Center for this morning, we'll have a mainly clear sky, mostly sunny through the day, the high 58, mostly cloudy tonight, low 40. For tomorrow, top of clouds and sunshine with the day ending cloudy, high 66. Clouds and showers for Sunday, our high temperature 56 degrees. I'm staff meteorologist Jim Rinaldi, and for more information, visit my1071thepoint.com.
Voted number 14 on Forbes' Top 100 Most Promising Companies, Anytime Fitness in West Plains offers a wide variety of fitness equipment to maximize your health and fitness goals. We proudly offer tanning, group exercise, and online support. Whether you're looking for nutrition plans, workout programs, or the simple advice to get you to the next level of fitness, Anytime Fitness has you covered. Visit us today at 1651 Gibson Street in West Plains or 1301 Highway 62 East Mountain Home, or call us at 417-255-2555. Anytime Fitness, we're the club for busy people.
Hey, I are well educated. I are a well educated guy. That's what they say in New York City.
Yeah, especially, here's the thing with all of this dumbing down of America. There are so many factors at play with that, Michael. We've got our public school system, which, the establishment of the Department of Education, 1977. We were number 1 in the world in education. In 30 years, they took us down to 17th.
Well, 80% of recent New York City high school graduates cannot read and have to go back into remedial classes before they can even go to community college.
Mm-hmm.
80%.
Yeah, I know. We need to give them more money.
That's what it'll do. That's what'll fix it. Let's just throw more money at them.
Yeah, that'll work. No, I mean, it's all of this ridiculous, passing people when they aren't passing, not actually spending time caring to teach children how to read, and there are some difficulties associated with that, particularly for some children. And then you've got the fluoride in the water supply, which really decreases the IQ level, and they continue to say, oh, no, fluoride, it's good for your teeth, all of this.
Right.
Well, we've got so many toxins in our food supply, so many toxins in our water supplies, and then we've got this toxic education system.
Really?
And it is just pitiful. Now, I was trying
So we're getting it in our water, and we're getting it in our ears and in our eyes.
Exactly. And all over your skin, which, does 30% of your, respiration.
Right.
So, the deck is effectively stacked against us, so the only thing to do is to unstack that deck. There have been a number of cities that have taken fluoride out of their water supply because of active citizens going against it, and, there are plenty of documented scientific studies out there showing how harmful fluoride actually is, even in low doses.
Do we have that in the water supply here?
I don't know. I tried to find out, and I couldn't. In West Plains, I'm uncertain. Yeah. You could just call up whatever you've got, a water board or something there. You could probably just give them a ring and find out.
I mean, is it like national security if they tell me they have to kill me or something?
I don't think it's classified information,
Right.
It's on a need-to-know
basis.
Should be rather public,
This thing about these kids graduating from high school here, 80% of kids who graduate New York City high schools cannot read, and they have to go back into remedial class. That sounds to me like we're back into the dark ages, but this time it's with government mandate, right, and approval or direction. Because, remember in the dark ages, right, the only guy who could interpret the one form of law, because let's face it, the church was pretty much in charge of the law at that time, or for the most part. And, there was only one guy who could actually read the Bible, so everybody had to rely upon his or her interpretation of it, or his interpretation, because there was no hers allowed. I'm sorry.
No hers allowed.
No hers allowed. But, when you think about it, from that perspective, that's pretty much where we're at, right? They want you to be as stupid as a stump, and then just absorb whatever you're told by the mainstream media, which we clearly know is, and even the most biased individual on the planet has to agree that the mainstream media is biased. I mean, even they admit it. So, basically what it is trust us to, or the priests of the news, right? Or the priests of, if you will, just to take the analogy and play it beat the dead horse with a dead dog. Follow what the priests of propaganda tell you, and don't think or research on your own. Don't do your own due diligence. Don't try to do your own homework. Just shut up and move along. There's nothing to see here.
Right. Right. Well, and I mean, I think that's extremely valid. When you have people who cannot read, reading is the absolute foundation for life.
Right.
You
Absolutely.
can learn about anything if you can read, and to prevent, and that's how I see this educational system headed, is to prevent people from being able to read and to critically consider what they are reading. It's really a crime.
Right. It really is. Because, you're barring them from ever learning critical thinking skills, which, to my way of thinking and your way of thinking, that borders on criminal, right? But to the liberal mentality who really is, I shouldn't say the liberal, to the totalitarian mentality, who really wants people to be sheep instead of intelligent participants in their own life. That is actually an advantage because, these kids can't think critically. They don't have the ability to articulate their thoughts. They don't have the ability to reason well enough to decipher what's parroted opinion coming from somebody else who just sounded good to them versus formulating their own intellectual philosophy and taking everyone's opinion that they hear, but then turning around and saying, okay, but let me just make sure that I'm not just drinking somebody else's Kool-Aid here, you know? And that's the problem. We're not teaching our children to have either critical thinking skills or the basic requirements of what's necessary for you to gather enough information to make informed decisions. And that's a major, major problem.
It is a huge problem, and here's another aspect of that. When people cannot express themselves well, and I'm sorry, but we pretty much just have words to use to get our feelings and thoughts and our input across to other people. When they can't do that, the frustration level increases, and they don't understand that feelings are not instructions.
Right.
So they act on feelings because they don't have the capacity by design
to reason.
To reason and to work through a problem that they might encounter with their spouse or in their society or what have you,
right,
verbally.
Well, isn't that funny, though? Because it seems like all of these liberal arguments always default as soon as you try to scrape beneath the surface of the argument, whatever that person's philosophy or ideology may be, the minute you actually scrape away that 1 micron thin layer of veneer, you look and it's empty inside. And the reason for that is because these people aren't formulating their own opinions. They're parroting what they heard from someone else. And the minute you scrape that away and expose it, they default back to an emotional argument.
Exactly.
Because they cannot stand there and give you a good logical reason why they believe the way they believe.
No, and it largely operates off of fear. You know, everything is fear based with this. There's practicality and please don't confuse me with the facts are the only thing that they can come down to on their arguments for things.
Right.
Michael.
By the way, Bree just texted me and said on the city website you can download a PDF file that shows the amount of fluoride in the city water supply here in West Plains. Uh-huh. Last I looked, it was a smaller amount of fluoride compared to Houston, Missouri, whose levels were actually outrageous. So I wouldn't know how to read a fluoride reading, whether that's good or bad. I'm assuming that any of it's bad, but if you don't mind, at some point, maybe in the future, you could download that and take a look and compare what's a safe. Or, is there a safe level? I don't even know.
There are some levels of naturally occurring fluoride, and I don't think we ought to get rid of all fluoride that's naturally occurring. But when you're adding it to the water supply, it's not safe. It's not naturally occurring.
Right.
Okay, having too much fluoride. Actually, there are some studies that indicate that having any fluoride damages your neural synapses and incapacitates people and animals, etc. Most of these studies have been done on animals, of course, but it incapacitates them
Actually,
from being
they're
able
not
to
being
read.
done on animals. They're being done on 300 million Americans.
Well,
or at least the 200 million that live in cities.
Right. So, I mean,
it's a gigantic experiment.
I'd like to see fluoride-free city water supplies, and then they could brag about that.
Well, the only purpose of fluoride, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the only purpose for fluoride is as a tooth decay agent to preserve or to limit the amount of tooth decay. Is that not correct?
That's what they say, Michael.
Okay. But my point is, I mean, why don't they take our fluoride and give it to Britain? And then, did I say that out loud? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Piers Morgan, I apologize. I'm so sorry.
Well,
maybe Piers came here for the fluoride.
Yeah, he needed it. I think actually he must have gotten too much. But
really,
at any rate, what they did was they found a local area that had high fluoride in its natural environment, and the people's teeth were really hard. So the toxic byproduct...
But so were their heads, right?
Yeah. The toxic byproduct of processing is fluoride. So they figured out, hey, these people have really hard teeth, and let's put it in everybody's water supply. We'll tell them it's good for it. It's selling waste, Michael. That's what fluoride is.
I gotcha. Okay.
So, it's not anything that anybody needs to ingest.
Well, since we've given everybody free health care anyway...
Oh, yeah. Right.
Hey,
I feel so free.
Me too. We're going to take a quick break, folks. When we come back, Doreen and I will kind of wrap the show. If you'd like to call us on the WITS hotline, you can do so. That telephone number is 257-1111 and or 866-554-6636. Appreciate y'all listening this morning. We're talking with Doreen Hannes. Her website, by the way, can be found at truthfarmer.com. We'll be right back.
The area's best selection of firearms, ammunition, and accessories can only be found at West Plains Pawn and Jewelry.
Online at westplainspawn.com.
Top of the line, new and used optics from Nikon, Leopold, Burris, Redfield, Zeiss, and Schmidt & Bender. Ask about their selection of binoculars, laser sights, and night vision goggles. With new arrivals every week, the area's best selection of firearms, ammunition, and accessories can only be found at West Plains Pawn and Jewelry, 1713 West U.S. Highway 160, or shop online at westplainspawn.com.
I know what you're thinking, Bunk. You're thinking, did he fire 6 shots or only 5?
Dirty Harry gets all his ammo from the battery station. John Rambo, you guessed it. He gets his ammo from the battery station, too. So if you need ammo, go to the place where the guys who know about ammunition go, the battery station. They have one of the largest supplies of ammunition in the area. So make sure you're stocked up and don't get low on shells. Go to the battery station at 303 Washington Avenue in West Plains.
From Bob Dylan to Whitney Houston to Alicia Keys, he has seen it all on the next Alan Combs Show. From humble beginnings, he became one of the most powerful men in the music industry. Legend Clive Davis is here with a behind-the-scenes look at 5 decades in the business, plus what happens to your hard-earned dollars when you give them to charity on the next Alan Combs Show.
Weekdays 9 to midnight. It's the Alan Combs Show on the Ozarks Best News Talk 107.1 The Point.
When their 5-year-old pestered them to let them play the game, Zombies versus the Ninja, Greg and Sharon Kitchen's first instinct was to say, "No, I don't think so, sweetie." Danny said he was offered the chance to buy more ammunition and more ammunition and more ammunition. Danny's game-playing session has cost the family $2,500.
Saturdays noon to 3 for the Kim Commando Show, and weekdays at 7:20 for your digital minute. That's Kim Commando on the Ozarks Best News Talk.
Boy, if only Danny had bought real ammunition instead of virtual ammunition.
You are silly this morning.
I am. I think somebody snuck something in my coffee. They were talking about Scotch and church before in the show before me. Maybe they just tipped the bottle into my.
Goodness,
that's not true.
No.
Hey, we've got a caller who wants to talk about fluoride because he's got a friend who grew up in the city that you were talking about, where the fluoride was natural, the high fluoride was naturally occurring.
Okay.
Go ahead, caller. Welcome to the show.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, the little town that was called Mount Pleasant, Iowa.
Thank you.
There you go.
Yes.
And they all have very hard teeth and very hard heads.
Well, yeah, in a way, and I don't know if it was because they were of Dutch extraction or just what it was, but we considered them family, although they were just very close friends.
Yeah.
And well, I'm not going to use their last name, but we'll just say Charlie and Mary Lou. They had 4 daughters, and they all grew up basically normal, and they all had perfect teeth. Never had a cavity. Not one of them has a filling, and that was where the study was conducted. Was there in Mount Pleasant?
Gotcha.
But the other interesting part is these girls are all very intelligent.
Mm-hmm. So maybe it's naturally occurring is not as negative as the man-made additive.
Right.
Exactly. The man-made additive is actually nothing more than like a petrochemical or some sort of a product waste. From industrial processing.
Mm-hmm.
You believe it's what, Doreen?
From tin.
From tin.
Tin processing.
That's it. I knew it was from like a metal processing thing.
Maybe that's why all rappers want metal teeth.
Now they all want gold, though.
Hey, yo, what's up with that? Yo, hey, cut it out,
They just want to shine because they're not really bright after all.
Well, you know how it is.
It's the thing is that the naturally occurring versus man-made or this, waste extraction, if you will, and then adding it to the water supplies is the issue.
Right.
And
right.
adding it to, it's actually in some foods as well as in toothpaste, you know.
Sure.
So,
but it's an additive in toothpaste, and rightly so. I mean, my point is, though, you know, we all brush our teeth twice a day, or some of us more. So my point is, why continue to add fluoride to the water when we've made dental hygiene such a focused point of our American, you know, culture, right? And and now with, you know, the availability of dental health care, which is available to, you know, almost everybody, irrespective of your income level. I mean, in fact, those people who are you know perpetually on assistance actually have better dental care than those of us who are just above the subsistence or the assistance level, and because those people don't have any, you know? And you know, but I mean, still, in all, you know, we have a pretty good dental system in this country in terms of overall health care for people. And I just fail to see the reason to continue to add it, you know?
Well, I think that there are plenty of reasons to stop adding it based upon the scientific studies that have been done that have tremendously negative consequences for adding this waste byproduct.
Sure.
You know, I think that there are plenty of reasons to stop that, and I also believe that people ought to have a choice.
Right. That's even more true. I mean, if we're going to have it, let's at least have an option to opt out of it, right? I mean, you know, maybe just if you really, really, really want it, then you can put a fluoride additive onto your tap or something, you know?
Exactly.
So,
or you know, I mean, there's plenty of opportunity for people to ingest more fluoride if they desire.
Sure.
You know?
Right, exactly. Hey, the phone lines are hammered, so let's grab a couple of calls before we wrap our show. Go ahead, caller.
Alrighty.
And turn off your radio, caller. How long have we been saying this in the radio business?
Forever.
I'm listening to your program for the first time today.
Are you?
Yes.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to chastise you on your first call. I usually wait until your second call to chastise you.
and I'm very impressed. I am a bit familiar with Doreen from the property rights meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I'm impressed with her and her expressions and her knowledge. But I wanted to share with you, since we're seeming to be talking about fluoride and West Plains.
Yes.
Apparently you're not aware that several years ago, I was renting out in the country and visiting with my friend in town.
Okay. What happened there?
Did we lose her?
I don't know.
Well, she needs to call back.
Dang, we do need to hear from her again.
Yes.
Hold on. Caller, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Mike.
I don't know where we lost our girl there.
It sounds like you and Doreen, probably like me, and now think it's okay to have it in toothpaste, but not to ingest it, right?
Well, for myself, what I've studied out about it, I don't even want it in the toothpaste, okay?
Okay.
But at least you can opt out of that by buying non-fluoridated toothpaste.
Yes, I can opt out of that. But if it's in the water supply, what are you going to do to take a shower and all of these kinds of things? You know.
Well, listen, I had a dentist. He's died of a heart problem, something unrelated, but he started noticing. I never did tell him I stopped using fluoride. And when I was about 35. And he started asking me, he says, did you stop using fluoridated toothpaste? He said, you used to not have one cavity. And I said, yes, sir, I did. And he said, let me tell you something. It really does work on keeping teeth hard. But he says, do not ingest it, do not drink it. Watch little children so they don't swallow toothpaste. Mm-hmm. But he says, use it on your teeth, but it will kill you if it's in the water.
There you go. Hey, listen, thank you so much. That lady is back on with the fluoride thing on West Plains. Thanks, Joe. Go ahead, ma'am. Hi, I'm sorry. I don't know whether we hung up on you or you had a bad phone or what, but this is turning into quite a first experience for you. I'm sorry. Go ahead with your story. I'm sorry.
Yes, on my friend's utility bill was a questionnaire asking, do you want to have fluoride in the water in West Plains?
Okay.
And so I discussed with her what I knew about the fluoride situation. I don't know how she voted, but everyone was given an opportunity to vote. Well, then a short while later, it was in the headlines of the paper that the people in West Plains had voted not to have fluoride.
And now you have fluoride.
But it said, we're going to have to educate them. on the good reasons for having fluoride.
I got it. So you don't agree with our concept, and so what we're going to do is just force you to take it anyway, because we're going to beat you over the head with the theory until you acquiesce.
So you researcher people can check into when that was. I don't remember.
I got you. Well, thank you for that great story, and thanks for listening.
Oh, and then back to dumbing down in school.
Yes.
I am privileged to have a book called Change Agents in the Schools.
Okay.
That was published by Barbara Morris. In her book, published in 1979, she tells all the different concepts and ideas that they are being taught to teach and use in the schools, which is totally changing the children.
Absolutely. Well, we all know that. I mean, you know, I grew up in the 60s, right? Started my schooling in the 60s. And I can tell you that the way they teach now and the way they taught then are so diametrically different and opposed to each other that, you know, and I remember them doing, we're going to try this new experimental educational system back in the 60s. But now they've taken it so like every year is a new experiment. It's like, haven't we found one way that works yet? And apparently not, because 80% of New York City's graduates can't read.
Exactly.
They can't read the diploma they got.
Thank you. I'm done. Now I'm a high school graduate. Yeah.
high school graduate.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I have spoken to the author, Barbara Morris, on the phone a number of times.
Yeah.
Back about 1980. And I said, I sure hope that you keep publishing your book. It is certainly a classic.
There's
That's
another
great.
one called Weapons of Mass Education.
I just love the whole title of that, you know?
Yeah, it's an excellent book, you know, and the issue is, and I think this applies to most things that have anything to do with government, is you got to keep it close. It should be handled on a local level, no higher than state. We shouldn't have a national Department of Education because look what's happened. I mean, we've got the evidence.
Right. Not to mention we could eliminate the entire sequester issue.
Exactly.
It's $100 billion that cost us.
And, you know, actually,
for Arne Duncan to indoctrinate our kids with pro-gay and brain-dead philosophies and concepts, right?
Exactly. You know, try to teach them how to read instead of how to put on condoms. That might be a good thing. You know?
Right. Let's make sure that you're an educated, articulate, well-reasoned, critically thinking adult before you decide to go out there and make some more of you.
Exactly. That would be helpful, you know. But the thing is that on a closer level, you can actually have better control. I think at this juncture in our history that we do need to have an educational system because too many people either cannot because of their workload or perhaps their lack of education actually homeschool their children.
Right.
You know? So
but I will say one thing about homeschooling, and that is that the volume of resources that are available to parents who do want to homeschool today are absolutely, I mean, huge.
Yes.
And so if you know you're considering if you've got the ability to be home to homeschool, that is an absolutely great way to go, and the resources are there for you to do it. And even if it's just to get your kids past that first 5 or 6 or 7 years of school, and then you want to move them into a public place where you've already ingrained and indoctrinated them into the right way of thinking, but now you want to kind of maybe help them out with the, you know, things like music and sports and stuff like that. That's great. So thank you for the call, caller, and welcome to our show.
Well, thank you.
I hope you'll stay with us and listen with us every morning. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll plan to do that.
All righty. Doreen, thanks very much for joining with us. You're my champion and my hero, and I appreciate you.
Oh, boy, I've got a lot to live up to.
Well, no, I mean, every time you come on a Friday, it's a great show, so thank you so much.
Well, good. Thank you for having me. I hope everyone has a blessed day.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Folks, you can find us on Facebook. Find Doreen's website at...
News Talk for Missouri and Arkansas, 107.1 KBMV, Birch Tree, West Plains, The Point.
Fox News Radio, I'm Dave Anthony. Hiring is up, so unemployment goes down to the lowest level in more than 4 years. The White House says it shows that the economy is gaining traction.